Hello everybody, this is Jamie with the Animotions team, and today we're going to be talking about some 2D illustration stuff, because we're going into brainstorming today. What we're going to be brainstorming today is sketches and concepts of the masks that we've got going into the shop and that we've got modeled into our actual 3D blend shapes that you can put over your face and interact with in our app. So what we're going to be doing for brainstorming is that we're going to come up with a new idea from scratch. This is something a lot of you are going to be going through when you come up with your own mask designs that you're going to pass off to the modelers who will then put it into a 3D environment. But you guys will be walking through the process of the actual brainstorming, then the concept drawing, and then making actual reference images for the models, and then even finally polished icons to go in the app of each of these masks that we've got going. So we are starting from the bare bones here with the brainstorming. We're working in Photoshop today, if you couldn't tell. We're going to make a new document. I've already got one here as an example of what I've already been starting, but I'm going to make a new one with you guys today. It can be any shape you want, really. We're just kind of going to make a sheet full of a bunch of sketches and scribbles. I like to keep mine at about 2200 by 2000 pixels. Make sure you're on pixels for the scaling. Just because I kind of like that almost square, but not quite, just a little bit wider on the sides. Then you're going to hit create. First thing you're going to want to do is go up to file and save this as something. So you're going to go to file, save as. I'm saving mine in my Animotions folder here. And I'm just going to call it Brainstorming Sketches. So now we've got our saved document, so whenever we need to save it from here on out, we can hit Control S on our keyboard or go up to File and hit Save, just for convenience. But first things first, before we even start drawing, we need to get our general concept or idea and start looking into that. So me personally, I've thought a little bit about it ahead of time. So far on the team, we have a boy, a girl, a Shiba Inu dog, and a dragon. So kind of keeping in that same vein of that Apple Animojis, I think what I'm going to start designing today is going to be a unicorn. I just think, it's pretty versatile, it's pretty universal and cute, so that's probably what I'm going to try for. So I've got my general concept or idea. That's going to be the first thing you want to come up with, because before anything else, you got to know what you're going for. So after you've got that general idea, the first step actually that is very helpful in working out these brainstorming sketches is finding images. And this is usually like references or inspirational ideas. I usually just find them on Google. So for my unicorn today, I will pull up the pages I've got here. As you'll see, the first thing I looked up was horse face, which is yielding some interesting results as evidenced by this guy here. But what I was really going for is to just get that head-on view of a horse face to kind of get that more realistic look into what I'm going for here. So I'm going to pick a few, or, one to a few that are that are helpful for the concepts that I want to make. So this one caught my eye. It's a nice front view of the horse. What you can do for this now is you can right-click on it and say Save Image As. I'm just going to kind of save these downloaded images and then bring them into Photoshop to reference as I start to draw my concepts. But that's a pretty good one of the front of a horse's face. I also, even though it's a drawing, I quite like this one. I think it's a nice look into the cartoony head-on thing. I wasn't really looking for it right now, but I saw it, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to the list. So the thing is, this is a cartoon concept that we're making. It's pretty stylized. So where we want to kind of go from here is not just with our realistic references. We can look up other cartoon references. So I know that Apple's Animojis has a unicorn, and I know that there's a unicorn emoji, so that's what I came to look up next, was unicorn emoji. So you'll notice most of these are from the side, which is fine, but I'm going to start with my concepts from the front view. That's going to be kind of the harder thing, I think, with designing a horse. It looks a little weirder from the front, but the front view of our mask models is the most important, because you'll be looking directly at the camera as you play. But regardless, I'm going to pick some designs that I like, that are kind of vibing with me. I like this one quite a bit, so I'm going to save that in there. And I'm going to scroll down and look for something that maybe is head-on. That's really what I'm hoping for here. I'm not seeing much. This one's head-on. It's kind of cute. It's even got a little more of a rounded face, which is what we have for all of our masks. You're going to want to be keeping that in mind, because most of these masks that we're making are pretty rounded, pretty circular at a base. So I found all that I think I really wanted to find from here. Now I'm looking for a bit more narrower results, more suited to what I'm kind of looking for. So I searched up chibi horse front view. Now, chibi is just a style. I'm not really I'm not huge into this sort of style, but I know that there's a lot of cutesy little cartoony stylistic choices that are made when you draw something chibi. So I looked up a chibi horse face, or chibi horse front view, and it's given me some more cartoonized, rounded designs here. So I like this one in particular. I'm really going into depth thinking about the facial shape right now. But I liked that one. I like this one as well. They're kind of all at 3/4 views, so we're going to have to do some designing with the front view. And honestly, I feel like I've got enough references to have something to go off of. So I'm going to go ahead and close my tabs. We're back in Photoshop now. So what we can do now is come into our downloads where I put all these things. And we can just select all of those, click on the first one, and then hit Shift to select to the last one. And we're going to drag those down into our Photoshop tab on the bottom. And as you'll see, there's this little plus icon on the screen here. We're just going to release that. And a few of these weren't compatible files, but the rest of them are going to be fine. And it's going to start adding our pictures here. I'm just clicking off the screen as it adds. So we've got all our pictures, and I want to resize them real quick. I want them kind of all off to the side just so I can see what's going on. So I'm going to right click on the image, and it's going to bring up all these options. I'm going to go all the way down here to free transform, and then it's going to allow us to grab the corners of these boxes and move these pictures over. So I'm going to move this over here, out of the way. I'm going to come down to our next layer, free transform, size it down a bit. Here's our next one, free transform, size that down to a size that is easy enough for me to see, but not going to be too in the way. And last but not least, our realistic horse here, we're going to free transform. They're overlapping a bit, but it's not a big problem. So we've got all our reference images in here. What we go to do next is make our actual sketches, our first bare bones, just off the top of our head sketches. So to organize things really quick, I'm going to come over to my layers panel over here. I'm going to hit this folder icon. It's right next to the add new layer icon. And it's going to make a group 1. I'm going to double click on the name of that, and I'm just going to call this references. And then I'm going to click the first and then shift select all the way down to all of our images and put them in the references folder. And then just close that up. It makes it easier. It just gives us a lot more room. So now for our rough sketching, I'm going to hit this folder again because I want to make a new group. And I'm going to call this one First Sketches. And then while I have that folder selected, I'm going to hit the Add Layer button, which is right next to the trash can, and it adds layer 1. And I'm going to label it just for the sake of this, and I'm going to call it Unicorn Sketches. Now to sketch, there is a specific brush that I like to use. Don't worry, we're using all the default stuff in Photoshop here. I first make sure that my color is all the way down on this bottom row here on the black, solid black colors. I come over to our paintbrush tool, which is down here about 1/3 of the ways. And when I click it, I'm going to go into my brush options to our general brushes here. And what I usually love to sketch with is this brush, this 4th one here, hard round pressure size. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to make it smaller to like about 9, I think is pretty good. And I'm going to put the opacity at about 40%. So what that's going to do is make our brush semi-transparent. If the opacity were up all the way, as you'll see here, it would be a solid black line. But as it's semi-transparent here, we've got this line that can draw on itself and overlap, which is really nice for sketching with. So I might even bump this up a bit to 12. I've got a pretty big image I'm working with here. So the brush settings don't need to be exact, but this is where I like to sit at. So we've got our brush going, we've got our canvas, and we're on our layer. From here, we are going to make the most bare bones, ugly, rough sketch, trying to get an idea in our head of what we want to go for. So one of the things that I'm most contemplating is going to be the shape of the face. I'm going to go for kind of a fusion between this and this, I think. Because we do kind of need the mouth to be on the face. That is one of the things about our masks, is that we need the mouth on the face so you can see it as it changes with your proportional face. So I'm going to go for a combination of those two, I think. But the major thing with our masks is that you're probably going to want to start with a circle because they're very circular. I'm going to come sketch near my references. So one of the things about our masks that you're going to want to keep in mind here is that they're mostly circular. So I'm going to start with just a big circle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that I can see what I'm doing a little better. So I've got this big circle, which is the main shape of the mask. And from there, I'm going to come out, and it looks like both of these have these kind of little cheeks that I'm going to kind of fuse together just for now while I'm roughly drawing out an idea of what I might want this to look like. And when I say rough, like it's going to be pretty rough. I don't know what I want the face shape to be. I don't know where I want all the features yet. I'm just trying to see if maybe combining these ideas, as my concept denoted, will look good or if I should pursue something else. So you can also play around with the resizing tools. I think I made the nose a little too big, so I come down here to this third tool on my list, which is our lasso select tool. And you're going to click and drag and it'll make a selection for you. So I've selected around the nose. I'm going to hit the second tool up here, which is the rectangular marquee tool, and right click and free transform this and maybe just make it a bit smaller because I thought the size was a little bit too big. And I like how this one's hair kind of swoops over like a swirly ice cream cone on the side. It's a very girly, very feminine unicorn. She's a very feminine unicorn. I have added a lot of feminine details here, such as the eyelashes and... So I like certain aspects of it. This is just a first rendition. But there are certain things that I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't think I like the face shape all that much. I don't think I'm a huge fan of wherever the nose is sitting on the body or how big the nostrils are. I think that's what I'm going to change. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this and I'm going to scooch it out of the way. And I'm going to make another. Just right next to it. I'm not going to restart or erase this one because I want to reference certain things about it. So I'm going to start with another circle. And I'm just going to go ahead and have a reel here again of me sketching out maybe something that I consider to be better. So I'm a little closer, I think, to what I'm looking for, but I don't think I'm quite there yet. So coming down, I'm going to just look. So I think part of the problem here is that looking at this really stylized drawing, it's quite rounded, but normal horses and even this cartoon horse right here have a little longer, narrower faces. So I'm going to make even another sketch here. And you'll notice I changed up certain aspects of the previous model, just trying to tailor it more to what I like. I'm going to do the same thing again here as I start. So that's a lot closer to what I want. So these sketches shouldn't take you very long at all, like 3 to 5 minutes, honestly, depending on your speed. But these are just supposed to be really rough, not even pretty ugly, honestly. Like, if I'm being honest, these first few renditions are pretty weird looking. But these are kind of what you're going for when you're thinking of making a rough sketch. You're trying to get some ideas out there where you change the features, play around with the shapes, and I think as I got near the end, I got closest to the shape I actually want. So now that I know that, I'm just going to kind of move all these up next to each other here. And for now, I'm going to turn this layer off. You can do that by toggling this little eyeball right here next to the layer. And so those are always going to be there. If I want to turn them back on, those are always going to be there for my reference. But now I want to start making some actual concept sketches. So I make a new layer. I'm calling it First Concept Sketches. It's right above the other one. In fact, you can come click on the other one and lock it right here with this locking icon. It's the last one in the lock options. And just to make sure that you don't draw on it anymore. Because if you'll see now, if I have it locked, I can't draw on it. There's a little icon and it tells me I can't. So that's pretty handy. You just want to make sure these are on separate layers to keep it convenient. So now that I'm on this new area here, I'm going to turn my opacity for my sketch even lower. And what we're going to do now is actually start to round out our design and come up with all the features that we think we like, and some sketches from different angles so we can figure out its personality and what it will look like from different views, which will help us in the next few phases of making the references for modeling. So we're going to start I'm going to start again with the front view, just a more polished front view, but then I'm going to start to add some variation to all my sketches to kind of get this personality of this unicorn down. So I'm going to do that for you now. I'm just going to put this in another time lapse. Another thing you can use if you're still not a huge fan of the shape, like I'm not 100% settled on mine still, another tool that's pretty handy in Photoshop that you can use if you like kind of the base of the sketch here, but you want to change the shape a little bit. So you can select it either with a rectangle or with the lasso select here, either one works. But just get the whole image in there. Get the whole image in there. Right click on it, free transform, and we're going to use this. There's a few different options here for what you can use. Usually changing the shape of something is best with the distort or the warp tool. I'm going to use distort for now, which will just kind of start to stretch this maybe in a manner that I prefer. I just felt it needed to be a bit longer. It was pretty short and stout, which I know most of our masks are, but I feel like for a horse it needed to be even longer here. Alright, so now we've already got a lot more polished of a sketch. So if we just do a quality check here, this is our more polished concept sketch compared to what our previous sketches were. So you can tell that this is already where you kind of start to get things a little more solid and a little closer to what you want your idea to be. Now what I'm going to do is, with this design in mind, because I'm liking it a lot more, kind of draw similar designs here, but from different angles and with different expressions, which is going to be beneficial because our masks are meant to change expression. So it'll be nice to see them with a few different views on their face. But I'm also going to change up some of the features here and there, and I'm going to probably mess around with the hairstyling, the length of the horn, if I want her to have eyelashes or not, that sort of stuff I'm going to mess around with on my next few sketches here, just to get a better idea of what I think works best. You never want to limit yourself to the first idea you come up with. It's probably not going to be your best. Clearly, because this was my first idea. And with continued refinement, this is where we've gotten. Always start with a circle while working with these masks. It's going to be a great baseline for you to work on your mask because it's probably going to be quite circular. So a circle is always going to be a good place to start. Make sure while you're drawing things at different angles too that you're thinking about how those shapes are going to be affected by the angle. Alright, so now I've got some pretty confident sketches here, actually, I think, of what I want this horse's facial shape to look like and some of the good ideas for features I'm starting to have. So we're going to go into exploring those a bit more in this next phase where we're going to actually start thinking about color. So what you're going to think about is taking your favorite and best features that you like the most, what combinations you think work best from these little sketches that we've done, and we're going to start merging them together and messing around with combining some of them along with some color. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to turn this layer off. First I'm going to lock it, but then I'm going to turn this layer off, and then we're going to start our third stage, which is our actual final concepts. This is our actual final sketches, as I'm going to call it. These are the ones we're going to make decently clean and we're going to color underneath and just make sure we've got a lot of variety for. For this, I'm also going to hide my references because I feel pretty comfortable with drawing the horse how I've been drawing her so far. But on our new final sketches layer, we're going to come in and we're going to draw, it can be quite a few. You can draw 5, 6, 7 different views with a mix of features for each of these horses that we're going to experiment with. So for me today, I'm going to make 6 sketches that I'm going to mess around with colors and variation with. Each of those sketches I'm going to try and keep at the same angle now because I'm comparing features and colors rather than trying to get their facial structure and features down. But I'm going to add a few different things and change up some stuff with each of them here and there, and I'm sure you'll see here. I'll get going with this and I'll just have a reel of me making 6 different sketches. Your previous sketches are always there for reference. I actually really enjoyed how I did the facial shape on this one. So I'm just going to do something to make it easier for me. I'm going to select it with my lasso tool. I'm going to hit Control C to copy it, and then you hit Control D to unselect. I'm going to make it transparent again, and I'm going to Control V. It'll add it again here on a new layer, and I'm going to size it up to just kind of match the size of this one because I really liked the facial shape, and I want to keep it. That's one thing that I figured out and decided from my concepts. I liked the shape of the face, and I don't want to change it from what I've got. I'm going to turn the opacity way down just so I've got a reference here. And then I'm going to go back to my final sketch layer. And I'm going to use what I used for this face shape. Alright, so this is the base that I've got for this horse. And since these are going to be the features that are consistent, that I've decided that I like, that I think I'll keep consistent between all my sketches, I'm going to copy it, and I'm just going to make 6 versions of this, which I'm going to draw on top of an altar. You'll notice as I'm adding these, it is putting them on different layers, and there's going to be a way to remedy that. I just want to make sure I've got them all in a good place first. Alright, so once you have all of them, it did add them on different layers that are all equally called final sketches, since those are the layers I copied. So I just shift select all of them, and then I right click on top of them, and when you hit merge layers, it'll put all those on the same sketch layer. So now that I have these, I'm going to come through and I'm going to draw some different features on these horses now. Just still sketching. We'll get to color in a minute or two. Okay, so I finally feel like I have a good mix here of different, hairstyles, maybe some different shaped horns, and a few different facial features such as eyelashes and maybe what could be on their cheeks, their little cheek blushes or some freckles or something. So now that we've got a good mixture, what I'm going to do is come through with the coloring. So I'm in my sketches thing here. And I'm going to actually add a folder underneath our final sketches layer. And I'm going to call this colors because I'm going to put a lot of my colors on different layers. So inside this colors folder, I'm going to start by having our first layer, which I'm going to call fur. And now I'm going to come through and I'm going to color different types of fur on each of these horse faces. I have a few different things I want to try. Some horses, if we look back at our reference, have different markings or patterns down their face, different colors a little bit. So I'm going to mess around with some different colors and then even some markings on the face for the fur here. So what you're going to want to do for the actual coloring, I still use the same brush. And at this point, you don't have to be super duper clean. These are still just concept sketches. None of this has to be really all that clean. But I will come up here and make sure my opacity is at 100. And I'm going to start going through and maybe choosing my first few colors for these first horse faces here. This first one I have is a bit of a baby pink, it looks like. What I do to fill in big areas quickly is I outline the area I want to fill in. Then I come down here, I don't know how many tools down this is, but it's our paint bucket tool. And I'm going to click on it. And then you click in the area that you wish to select. There's a bit of a little fuzzy line that it'll leave here that you're going to want to come over with the pen real quick just to make sure it looks clean. So that's our first one, loosely colored in. I like the pattern, but I think I'm going to mess around with a different color. For some reason, I feel like a really pastel yellow might do something interesting, so I'm going to come down and I'm going to work with that for a minute. Unicorns, I picture pretty pastel light colors. I'm going to be doing similar things on the hair I had in my mind. But still, you want to make sure you get a variety in there so that you know you're not missing anything special or cool that you could have had before. You want to experiment with everything. Sometimes you'll pick on a color and you just won't be a fan of it. I know this is a really weird combination. I'm trying complementary colors here. I know that yellow and purple are complementary colors, so I'm kind of going off a limb here and trying out purple and yellow, even though they do look a little silly and I don't think they're my favorite. But you want to make sure you try everything. For this next one, I'm going to try something interesting. The color I'm picking is really saturated and it might look a little weird at first, but I'm going to try doing a gradient on it, and I'll show you one way you can do just a quick, maybe not super clean, but just a quick tester gradient here. What I mean by that is a color fading into another color. So I'm going to fill in the entire area that I want to be shaded. And then I'm going to come in to our paint bucket tool and to switch it over, because under our paint bucket tool is the gradient tool. So what you can do is you click and hold on the icon and you'll see this gradient tool option here. And the gradients are a little complicated. I'm just going to show you how to change settings for mine in particular. But you're going to want to come up here. You're going to click on this box that you see up here, this colored box with the checkered pattern. It might look a little different on your computer. That was what my last gradient setting was. But I'm going to click on that. And just to make sure that I'm fading from the colors I want, from one, it'll fade from this end to this other end. So I'm going to click this little blue box here, and I'm going to go into the color box, and I'm going to eyedrop. It'll automatically come up as an eyedropper. This color. I'm going to select the bottom of this one over here, and I'm going to make this, I'm going to just make it up to this whitish color. First, you want to make sure You might have some different settings under your gradient here. That's why this is just optional, because it's going to depend. It's going to depend on the version you have. So I'm going to have it go from foreground to background so that I have 2 color options here. So now I've chosen it's going to fade from this dark pink to this really light pink. To make sure it stays on fading only from this pink color though, our 4th tool down is called the Magic Wand tool. You might have to click into it and make sure you've got that one selected. But when you click on an area, it's going to select only one color for that area. So I had to come up here and I had to also select the ears because I want them to be included in the gradient. You just hit Shift and it will select everything as long as you're holding Shift. I'm going to come and I'm going to grab this gradient and I'm going to drag it down. And as you'll see, it's going to add it in here for us. I want it to go in the other direction, so I'm going to try it like that. And it just gives us this nice interesting effect here of this gradient. I am going to come in and I'm going to start doing my accents with this lighter color. So I dropped that down here with our 7th tool. I dropped by clicking on the area of the color I want to use. And now it'll give me this lighter pink that I can fill in some of these other areas with. Don't worry about the messiness of your lines. Like I said, you're just trying to get a rough idea of what you want to go for. As you'll notice, so many of my lines are going outside their boundaries and everything does look pretty messy. But that's the way it's going to be with this stage of things, with the brainstorming stage. Alright, so I have a bunch of different skins now that I think I like. There's some pretty wacky ones and some pretty normal ones. But as I get into the next few stages, which are going to be the hair and the details, I want to be trying to make these color schemes work together in a nice way. So I have this fur layer, I'm going to lock it, and I'm going to make a new layer for the hair. And I'm going to go through a similar process. I'm going to come through and I'm going to color all these different hairstyles in ways that I think will fit nicely with all these different schemes I've come up with. I'm going to experiment with the ways I go about it. Some of them will be solid, some of them will have a gradient, and some of them will be this kind of cool stripe thing that this first image here I have is got going on. So I'm just going to start experimenting with it. Alright, so now I've got a variety of hair. The last thing I'm going to do is lock my hair layer, make a new one, and this one's going to be called Details, because on this one, I'm going to go through and try different variants on things such as whatever I put on the cheeks, the horns and their color, and the eye color and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go through and experiment with my last few ideas. Alright, we have a lot of different ideas here now at the end of the day. So the wonderful thing about making a sheet like this is now, if you don't even think you could pick one of these specifically, there's a lot here that you could mix and match. We have a variety of color palettes, of shapes, and of hairstyles and eye colors. You could go through and pick out and mix and match what you think would look good together. For example, when I want to go on to my final concept, I could say, I like this guy in the corner, I like his color scheme, but I'd want to try it with a hairstyle more like this first horse. So you could mix and match different things that you think would look good together until you finally have your favorite pieces of each design you've made. Once you've hit this point, a good thing to think about doing, it's totally optional, but a good thing to think about doing is getting feedback from your peers, showing people that you know, and asking them what their favorite is, what they think, which color schemes they might try to mix with what other features, just those sorts of things. It's nice to get input from other people, especially when you've been staring at the same thing for so long. Once you've finished with this, just stepping back just to look at it all, we started with our references, then we moved on to our first initial sketch stages, and then we kind of rounded those ideas out and came up with something a little more final. And from there, we really started getting in our final designs, mixing and matching with our colors. And I think we've got a lot to work with here. You are ready to move on to the concepting phase. You've finished your brainstorming.